Well, the state of Kansas is suing Pfizer for misleading the public about their COVID-19 vaccine. So this is a very interesting case because we all know that these vaccine companies received immunity for, well, they really can't be sued for much when it comes to if there were any side effects, if anybody experienced any adverse reactions, there's immunity for these vaccine companies. But Kansas figured out a workaround. And they are now saying that they're suing Pfizer for misleading advertisement. That okay, maybe the government gave you immunity for the variety of adverse side effects that people experienced, but you didn't get immunity when it came to misleading about what your vaccine does and does not do. Let's go ahead and play the explanation. This is the Kansas Attorney General. Watch this.
Thank you for being here today. We brought together this press conference to make the following announcement, and that is today Kansas is filing a civil suit against the Pfizer Corporation under the Kansas Consumer Protection Act, seeking enhanced civil monetary penalties, damages, and injunctive relief for misleading and deceptive statements made in marketing its COVID-19 vaccine. Pfizer also violated previous consent judgments with the state of Kansas, in which Pfizer promised never to use deceptive information to market their products. Kansas's case is the first of a multi-state collaboration, with Kansas being the first of 5 states to file suit. Before I go further, let me put this in context. As we all know, during the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a great deal of panic and anxiety. Many people who were elderly or who suffered from various medical conditions had already died when the vaccines became available. And when that time came, when the vaccines became available, every one of us had to make 2 decisions. Am I going to take the vaccine? And if so, which vaccine will I choose to take? And these decisions were being made in a hurry. In some ways, you could say even being made under duress. In such an environment, it is imperative that Kansans making that decision receive the truth. They needed the truth. All Americans needed the truth. And in multiple respects, Pfizer did not provide the truth. Much of the information in this lawsuit came out as a result of a FOIA lawsuit seeking information from Pfizer that still had not been made public. And it was only a result of that effort that some of the information in this lawsuit is available. I urge everyone to read the 69-page complaint that goes into great detail about the specific statements that were made and the misleading nature of those statements made to Kansas consumers. The following is a quick summary of, I think, some of the 4 most egregious examples of misleading the public in Kansas. Pfizer marketed its vaccine as safe for pregnant women. However, in February of 2021, Pfizer possessed reports for 458 pregnant women who received Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine during pregnancy. More than half of the pregnant women reported an adverse event, and more than 10% reported a miscarriage, many within days of the vaccination. Pfizer also possessed information from its own October 2020 study on pregnancy in rats, indicating that its COVID-19 vaccine was likely linked to infertility, loss of litters, and stillborn offspring. Number 2, safety relating to heart conditions like myocarditis. Pfizer consistently denied any evidence of a connection or safety signal between its COVID-19 vaccine and myocarditis or pericarditis. Indeed, on January 18th, 2023, when asked whether its vaccine caused strokes or myocarditis, Pfizer chairman and CEO Alan Berla stated, quote, "We've not seen a single signal, although we have distributed billions of doses," end quote. A signal that he was referring to as a safety signal, which refers to a negative consequence. However, as Pfizer knew, the United States government, the United States military, foreign governments, and others had found that Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine caused myocarditis and pericarditis. Number 3, effectiveness regarding variants. Pfizer also claimed that its COVID-19 vaccine protected against COVID-19 variants, even though data available at the time showed Pfizer's vaccine was effective less than half the time against variants. Finally, transmission. Pfizer urged Americans to get vaccinated in order to protect their loved ones, clearly indicating a claim that Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccination stopped transmission of COVID-19. Pfizer later admitted that it had never even studied transmission of it after its recipients received the vaccine and whether they could say it stopped transmission. After making these misleading statements, Pfizer also engaged in some censorship attempts. Emails reveal that Pfizer officials coordinated with social media platforms to censor any speech critical of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine safety and effectiveness. It should also be noted that Pfizer elected not to join the federal government's vaccine development program known as Operation Warp Speed and declined that development funding. When asked about that, Pfizer's CEO, Albert Bourla, said Pfizer did not participation in the program in order to, quote, liberate, end quote, Pfizer's scientists and to avoid government oversight of its vaccine development. He also said, quote, they want reports. I don't want to have any of that, end quote. Referring to they, when he said they, he was referring to the federal government. Pfizer's misleading statements contributed to success in marketing its vaccine in Kansas. By February of 2024, Pfizer had delivered over 3.3 million doses of its vaccine in the state of Kansas. This accounted for over 60% of all vaccine doses given in the state of Kansas. This suit is being filed today, and as I mentioned before, it is part of a multi-state effort in which more suits may follow depending on Pfizer's reaction. But this is about marketing products to the public. As I think most people know, the federal government conferred immunity on the vaccine manufacturers for tort suits seeking damages from injuries they received, but that did not free any of the vaccine manufacturers from their obligation to not mislead the public or make deceptive statements in marketing it. So this is principally about the marketing efforts that were made and how they contradicted what the company knew.
And the government should have never given any sort of immunity for injuries regarding the vaccine, especially if these manufacturers are going to be making billions upon billions of dollars. There's a profit motive there. And that is exactly why the government shouldn't have given them a single ounce of immunity unless they were going to give the vaccine away. If they were going to do it and it was like an act of charity and the government was just going to pay for the actual manufacturing of the doses and the distribution of the doses so that the company doesn't lose money, but they, this would be sort of like rallying together during an act of wartime type of a thing. Had they had done that and said, look, you can't make a fortune off of this vaccine, or if you do, the government gets a significant cut of that, and that goes back into other programs that the government, but even then that would be, then the government would have an incentive to lie to the public or to hide things from the public in order to boost up revenue so that the government could take that revenue and wage war around the world or something ridiculous, right? But the fact that they gave these companies immunity and then allowed these companies to make gobs and gobs and gobs of money off of it, that's exactly why there never should have been that sort of immunity. They should have held these companies to a standard saying, look, if you want to make a lot of money, we want a vaccine. I think we can all understand the motivation during a pandemic. Now, if you've never watched this show before, and this is the first time you've ever watched me, know that I was extremely critical during all of this and against everything from day one. But I think we could all understand, try to reverse ourselves back into the very beginning of this pandemic. We didn't really know what COVID-19 was at first. Let's just go back to that day. When you don't know what the virus is, you don't know how deadly it is, you don't know how it spreads exactly, you don't know who it affects, right? You don't know any of these things. I could understand the logic behind whatever this is, we need to hurry up and come up with some sort of a protection or a cure. We've got to do something because this could be the plague that turns the world into the Walking Dead, right? I mean, there could be that. So I understand the push and the desire, and I don't blame the governments. I've never really been a lot of people blame Trump for Operation Warp Speed. I don't blame the government for Operation Warp Speed. What I blame them for is immunity against any of the injuries. That's the issue to me. It goes right to the immunity issue because I can't blame a government for doing everything they can to try to protect their population. That is the job of the government, actually. So if they're going to dump a bunch of money into a pharmaceutical company and say, look, we want everybody to drop whatever it is you're doing, and we just want everybody to focus on this because it's a matter of national security. I can understand that. But again, the issue comes down to allowing them to make a fortune off of it while giving them immunity. So that is all the people that have experienced side effects are now at a loss. They're paying all their own medical bills. They have all of these issues, and the government gave these companies immunity, and there's nothing these people can do about it. Now, what Kansas is doing is saying, yeah, but you guys, you had a protection against the immunity from side effects, but you didn't have any protection against misleading the public with your statements or your non-statements or some of the behavior that you did in order to mislead the public. And they go through this list of things. So let me just kind of go through these again. Just really, I think this is going to be a landmark lawsuit. This definitely could win as long as they can prove that Pfizer knew and Pfizer lied. If they can show, if it just comes back that Pfizer didn't know, that they were doing the best they could and they were learning as they went along, that's one thing. But I think they'd have to prove that they actually made misleading statements and they knew this, they had the data, and I think they probably could find this. So first of all, they're saying Pfizer misled the public that it had a safe and effective COVID-19 vaccine. What is effective? I think we all know now that when a person is told they're getting a vaccine, they believe that's going to stop transmission. That's what vaccine means to us when we say vaccine. And that's not what this vaccine did, right? We know now definitively it absolutely did not stop the spread. Pfizer said its COVID-19 vaccine was safe, even though it knew COVID-19 vaccine was connected to serious adverse events, including myocarditis and pericarditis, which, by the way, they censored when one of my first videos censored from COVID was was reporting on the fact that people were reporting after taking the vaccines heart issues. And these reports were coming out, and then those reports were censored. They were removed from the platforms. Oh, this is dangerous misinformation. And then it turned out that wasn't dangerous misinformation at all. It was actually true. And now it's actually on the warning label. So the question is, can Kansas prove that Pfizer knew this when they were rolling out the vaccine and they failed to tell us that if you give this to your particularly young sons, they could end up with heart problems the rest of their lives? So Pfizer says COVID-19 vaccine was effective, even though it knew COVID-19 vaccine waned over time and did not protect against COVID-19 variants. Pfizer concealed this critical effectiveness information from the public. And the waning was very rapid. In fact, after you got the vaccine for 2 weeks, it didn't have the effect of bouncing the virus off of you in the first 2 weeks. In fact, Cleveland Clinic showed that you were more likely to get COVID-19, depending on how many shots you had. The more shots you had, the more likely you were to get COVID-19. But there is some data that shows that it would give you had a less likely chance after you got through the 2 weeks after getting the vaccine. There is some data out there that shows that the vaccine did in fact lessen your likelihood of getting transmission, but the window of time was very small. We're talking 4 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And each week that went by, it significantly waned to where you got to the 9, 10, 11, 12 week mark, and there was no benefit whatsoever. So it maybe kept you protected for a period of 6 weeks where maybe you were less likely to get the virus. But even then, the less likely wasn't much less likely. It was like, okay, it reduced it by 20% or 30%, which seems significant, but not when you're told or you're led to believe that you were that you would be safe to go around grandma. That's what they kept saying to us. You get the vaccine and then you can go be around grandma. Or they were telling grandma, you get the vaccine and you can go live your life out there in the world. And then grandma got COVID. And what happened? Those on say Pfizer said its COVID-19 vaccine would prevent transmission of COVID-19, even though it knew it never studied the effect of its vaccine on transmission of COVID-19. I'm going to be interested to see where they actually came up with this phrase in particular. I actually, and I followed the pandemic very, very closely. I followed everything that everybody was saying very, very closely. And I have to say, I don't think Pfizer ever actually said that their vaccines would prevent transmission. I don't think they said that. I think there were a lot of people around them saying that, like the FDA, the CDC. There were a lot of doctors, talking heads on the news. But I don't know if Pfizer themselves ever said that. So I'm not sure if they're going to be able to pin them on that. They might be able to get them on alluding to that, but I don't know how well that holds up in a court of law. So to keep the public from learning the truth, Pfizer worked to censor speech on social media and question Pfizer's claims about its COVID-19 vaccine. So we know that they were working on censoring speech. Also, Pfizer misrepresentations of safe and effective vaccine resulted in record company revenue of approximately 75 billion from COVID-19 vaccine sales in just 2 years. Yeah, so go after them for that 75 billion bucks. That's what the damages should be. I mean, they went out there, they claimed that they had this vaccine. You could go live your life, grandma, once you get the vaccine, and they made $75 billion in 2 years. Pfizer's actions and statements relating to its COVID-19 vaccine violated previous consent judgment with the state of Kansas. Let me just show you. I'm actually reading from the document itself, guys. So saying that violated previous consent judgment with the state of Kansas. Okay. Pfizer's actions and statements relating to its COVID-19 vaccine violated the Kansas Consumer Protection Act, regardless of whether any individual consumer ultimately received Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine. And Pfizer must be held accountable for falsely representing the benefits of its COVID-19 vaccine while concealing and suppressing the truth about its vaccine's safety risks, waning effectiveness, and inability to prevent transmission. Yeah, not only Pfizer, but I mean the government, right? There's a lot of people who should be held accountable for leading people to believe that these vaccines would stop transmission. That alone, whether there was any side effects from the vaccine itself, and that could be, that's certainly something that they're talking about in this lawsuit. But even if you take all of that away, the fact that the vaccine did not stop transmission, when people were told, if you go out, especially older people who are the most vulnerable, they were told, take the vaccine, and everyone around you is taking the vaccine, you're totally safe. And we know now they were not, that they really were not. That in and of itself is, I think, grounds to sue. That was the big debate that I had on Rising with Ryan Grimm when I was co-hosting the show with them. And one of the arguments that we got into often was about the COVID vaccine, and me saying over and over, it doesn't stop the spread. It doesn't stop the spread. And me being scoffed at by my co-hosts, not just Ryan, but other co-hosts as well, who would scoff at me for making that claim when I wasn't making a claim. I was looking at the data. I was actually following the science, the real science. And particularly, interestingly, Israel, who had the first to get the vaccine, and they vaccinated the vast majority of their population, only to find they had to vaccinate them again. And then, oh no, it didn't stop the spread. Oh, we got to do a booster, and that didn't stop the spread. Israel was talking about their fourth booster dose before the US even rolled out the first shots. So we already knew by then, at that point, we knew it did not stop the spread here in the United States. If it wasn't going to stop it in Israel and the other countries that received it first, it wasn't certainly going to stop it here. One of the arguments that we got into was, I remember being asked, don't you feel bad? You're dangerous, Kim. You're dangerous because you are discouraging people and they need to be taking this. That's what's safe for grandma. And my response was, no. What is harming grandma is being told that if she takes this, she's safe. And she could go out in the world and start going on her cruises again and partying and being around everybody, and everybody around her is vaccinated. And so she's not going to get COVID and she's perfectly fine. And then grandma finds herself getting COVID. And a lot of those people with vaccines still were hospitalized. So now what? Now, what do you tell grandma? That to me is the most dangerous, rather than telling grandma, look, it doesn't stop the spread. And then grandma can make some decisions as to, okay, is she going to go back out and do the cruises? Is she going to go back out there and do all the family gatherings, or does she feel safer not doing that and instead doing everything virtually and living her life in lockdown, or, whatever? I mean, that's the discussion that grandma deserved. That's the debate that grandma deserved. And instead they ripped that away by telling everybody, don't worry, you're all safe. Everybody's safe and cozy. Now you just have to get this jab. Oh, wait, now you need another one. Oh, wait, now you need another one and another one and another one and another one. Whoops, you still got COVID. That's the debate that we deserved, and we didn't get that. And the question is, who robbed us of those debates, and can they be held accountable for robbing us of those debates? And I'm hoping now, this is a great step forward. It's of course too late. People are watching different things in the news. They're not paying attention to this. And yet this is the discussion that we should be having. And now these lawsuits are coming out. And will any of us get apologies? Will the people who lost their jobs get their jobs back? Will the people who lost family members, will those relationships mend? Will the people who lost their lives believing that they were safe and they went out to cruises and they got COVID and they weren't so safe, are we going to bring them back? This is a lawsuit that is, I'm glad to see it happening. We've got to find ways to go after these companies, hold people accountable so that they don't want to repeat this. And that's the point. The point is the damage has already been done with this. What we don't want is this misleading the public to be allowed and then they do it again, the next disease X, monkeypox, flu, bird flu, whatever it is, we don't want them coming back around and saying, well, this is what we did the first time around with COVID and we're going to do it again. No, we got to hold them accountable so they never even dream of doing this again. So that these vaccine companies say, hey, man, we're out. You want to do Operation Warp Speed, which Pfizer didn't even do. Pfizer says, we don't want to be beholden to your government oversight. I'm not even sure what the government oversight did, for like Moderna. I'm not even sure what kind of oversight there actually was. That would be a question. But we don't want them to be able to get this kind of money again, roll this out without some serious consequences. So not only do I think they should be sued for that $75 billion, but it should be double that. They should feel a lot of pain so that they never even want to endeavor in this again. They're going to say, no, you know what? We want to go through the regular protocols. When we develop a drug or a pharmaceutical, we want to go through the regular protocols, which still even aren't that great. And we will test it thoroughly through years of study, clinical trials. We'll do all of the things we need to do before we even put out there in the public, because we don't want to end up with a lawsuit like we got last time after the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's what we need to see happen, is they need to feel pain so that they never do this again. If they don't feel that pain, I think we can expect for this to happen again. And that would be, that's the thing that we should be ultimately very worried about. We are in such an unstable time. There's political insanity, rumors of civil war, an unstable stock market, and now the looming threat of a new global health emergency. Did you know that there's a bird flu summit coming in early October, just next month? It's eerily reminiscent of Event 201 that foreshadowed the COVID pandemic. And get this, the first topic on the agenda is mass fatality management planning. If that doesn't send chills down your spine, I don't know what will. But here's the good news. You don't have to be scared if you're prepared. The wellness company created the medical emergency kit, and every home in America should have at least one of these. They're packed with life-saving meds like the stuff I can't talk about here on YouTube, amoxicillin, and even a Z-Pack. And it's all backed by experts like Dr. Peter McCullough. This means no more frantic searches for a doctor, no more emergency waiting rooms, just a few clicks, and this kit is delivered to your front door. So in times like these, having your medical emergency kit is not just a luxury, it's an absolute necessity. So protect your family by preparing now. Just head over to twc.health/Kim and use code Kim to save $45. Don't wait until it's too late. Just act now, take control, and ensure you're protected against whatever comes next. That's twc.health/Kim. Use code Kim to save $45. Plus, you're going to get free shipping. Do that right now. I've used my kit already, not for things like bird flu. There's just so many great things in this kit that you'll use it just in regular life. You'll find yourself getting a little sick, or maybe you got a cut and you need an antibiotic or whatever. So this kit is really, really great. So once again, twc.health/Kim. Use code Kim to save $45 plus get free shipping.